So yes, welcome to last team project presentation regarding the market research that we had conducted for Technis, that is a startup working in a smart tennis courts. This project was conducted with Technis as well with several tennis clubs in Switzerland, but also in different European cities. And we want to thank you all to be here with us today. And also, we look forward to inform you about our project and the progress of our project during this presentation. So our today's journey will lead us to our objectives and conclusions and recommendations. But first of all, I want to introduce you our team. Today we have Shervin Amini, Alvaro Abati, Flora Lee, she's via Skype because she already started her internship in Singapore with Lagardère, and myself, Stephanie Chatelain-Carter. So Technis, unfortunately they are not here, but we want to thank them because we had a very good year with them working for their project and our project. And so Technis is an EPFL startup. There are two master graduates from the EPFL that founded this startup, and they have been winning different prizes, like the Swiss Startup Award in 2015, and they are working closely with the Swiss Tennis Federation in several projects. They're mainly working in non-intrusive and immediate information tactile flooring to create products like the smart tennis court. So now I will leave the floor to Shervin, who will explain you more in detail about the products.
Thank you, Stephanie. So Technis has been developing a smart multi-touch flooring which can be installed under some tennis courts. It can only be installed under some specific surfaces and is able to sense and capture ball and player movement. Functionalities include automatic line calling and score counting, footwork drills, yes, and ball and player movement analysis, trying to be in sync here. Transmitting information in real time through an application. On the other hand, I'm sorry, could you? Thank you for thank you. Technis' training pad, my Technis pad, is a modular mat that can be installed anywhere manually on the court. The dimensions are usually 1/2, but can be customized according to the demand of the client. It was designed to act as a prototype that's an early version and easy to access, and it was used for our interviews that were conducted by our team and Technis at the same time. Its companion app can allow users to socially interact in order to find sparring partners and tennis courts. And now Stephanie will talk about our objectives. Thank you.
So as Shervin explained before, there are two projects, and our project focuses on the training pad. So we start working since the beginning of the year with our client to understand their needs, and we came up with three main objectives. The first one was to develop a database of information of different tennis clubs respecting Technis criteria in Switzerland, but also in major European cities. The second was, once we finished the database and segmentation, was to gain the feedback and assess the level of interest of those clubs regarding the training pad. And the third one was to establish a modern tennis persona through market research about all the technologies around tennis, so wearables, applications, and different technologies on the market. So now that I explained you the objective, you know more about our client, I suggest that we go more in depth regarding our objective number one, that was the database. So since the beginning, the team received some criteria from Technis. They really want to target specific tennis clubs. So criteria like minimum number of courts or minimum number of members. So the first step was to gather information for all the Swiss tennis clubs. So we decided to, of course, work with the Swiss Tennis Federation, and we gathered information like number of members, number of courts, email address, among some other information. And we came up with a database of 889 tennis clubs in 23 different cantons. So once we finished this Swiss database, Then we did a segmentation. So as I explained you before, they wanted to focus and target specific clubs. So they wanted those clubs that respect three main criteria. The first one was minimum number of 300 members, then minimum number of 6 courts, and a geographic scope. They wanted us to focus in the western part of Switzerland, that is mostly the French-speaking cantons, even if we have also bilingual cantons like Fribourg, and also we have some German cantons like Basel and Zurich. So once we applied these criteria, we got 53 tennis clubs matching all of them. And then we worked in a mapping tool that will be a helpful tool for Technis' future prospection, as they will have main information that we got from the database, and of course they will arrange easier their meetings when they have to meet the clubs and showcase the product, the training plan. The third step was a closer research. Why? Because actually there is a last criterion. They wanted the clubs to have at minimum 1 indoor hard court. Why? Because this is the surface in which the training pad functions the best. So we did a closer research and we tried to understand those 53 clubs, the type of court that they have. Is it clay, wood, grass, other type of courts? If they were indoor or outdoor, among some other information like the number of tournaments they are organizing, as well as number of members, among some other information. And we got 9 tennis clubs that match all the criteria. So this is important because this is the sample that we took to then, with Technis, decide the clubs that we wanted to interview. In parallel of this Swiss database, we also work in a European research. They asked us to focus in 3 different cities, Paris, London, and Madrid. And they wanted us to find clubs respecting 3 criteria. Minimum number of 300 members, minimum a number of 6 courts, and minimum 1 indoor court. And it was asked to find 6 clubs in each city. We had some challenges in Paris and Madrid because in those cities mostly the courts are clay and outdoor. So what we decided to do for the Parisian case was to open the scope and try to see in the banlieue parisienne, in the surroundings of Paris. And for the Spanish case, we decided to focus more in the northern part of the country, as there we can find more clubs with indoor hardcourt. So now I give the floor to Alvaro, who will explain you more about the interviews.
Thank you, Stephanie. Regarding the interviews, the second major objective of the project was to fully understand the type of clubs interviewed and also the level of interest on implementing the Technis training pad and the smart multi-touch flooring. So, as a result of the segmentation previously explained by Stephanie, 9 tennis clubs fulfilled all the criteria, but the team just approached 5 out of the 9 clubs because Technis was already in contact with the other 4. So accordingly, however, just 3 out of the 5 clubs approached accepted to be interviewed. So accordingly, the team suggested Technis to open the scope and interview other clubs even they didn't fulfill all the criteria. Then Technis proposed 2 additional clubs, so at the end, the team conducted a total of 6 interviews. The interviews were conducted as a qualitative research using an interview script with questions validated by Technis. Regarding the structure, first, the questions were focused on the characteristics of the tennis clubs. For instance, whether they had a competitive or leisure orientation, and also the frequency of play. Secondly, a demonstration and explanation of the Technis training pad was showcased by Technis, followed up by questions carried out by the team in order to get feedback about it and to detect their favorite functions of it. Last but not least, the team asked the tennis clubs about their openness to incorporate new technologies in order also to identify the existing apps used by their members. So, regarding the characteristics of the tennis clubs, some key findings were identified. First, most of the tennis clubs have a leisure and social orientation, mainly focusing on families. Additionally, most frequent players play from 2 to 3 times a week, and also 85% of the players that are using the courts are commonly members, while the 15%, remaining 15% are non-members that are usually required to pay an hourly rate. Secondly, regarding the product feedback, firstly concerning to the training pad, it was identified that most tennis clubs consider the training pad more for competition purposes than for leisure players. In this regard, while the line calling and social features were well regarded, the tennis clubs expressed that they are still missing some characteristics related to the speed of the ball or the distance to the net while the ball is traveling. For instance, as TC Glan responsible tournament said, like, the pad is an interesting tool that needs to be improved with more additional features, but it's a good beginning to improve the technology in tennis. Regarding the smart flooring feedback, it was commonly perceived that it was a useful tool for amateur players, and it produced a much better impression than the training pad. And regarding their openness to technology, for example, while the tennis clubs were not very familiarized with the new technologies, they were open to it. For instance, in some cases, the tennis club presidents were unable to name some apps used by their members. Now I give the floor to Shervin, who is going to explain you the third objective regarding the digital tennis persona.
Thank you. As the companion app for Technis' training pad offers social but also technological functions, we looked naturally into the software and equipment market in tennis. The online search naturally started with tennis's major equipments and brands, and naturally we looked at Babola, Yonex, Wilson, Prince, and Dunlop among others. And surprisingly, we found that while Babola and Wilson might invest into innovations with smart rackets and connected chips, Prince and Dunlop, for example, are focusing on the quality of their racket, and Yonex is focusing on the marketing part of their business with recent US Open winner Stan Wawrinka. On the other hand, we found that major brands that are multimedia brands, such as Sony, have invested in the market. They invest in the market with, for example, the smart sensor, which is competing with Babola Play, a plug-in chip for tennis rackets. Also, connected wearables, such as Fitbit, are entering the market. They face the competition of Babola Pop and allow players to store data and analyze data, of course, while wearing a smart band attached to their wrist. So, once information was gathered on each of these products, the market research looked for those three information among other. First, the functions. What does the product do and who is it for? 4 different product categories were established: social, scoring, performance analysis, and health, taking the form of software or hardware, namely applications or technical equipment. Price and economical model. So while some software were free to obtain at first, they featured premium offers which require subscription to it, so that they can properly adapt to the demand of individual needs. Number of users, for example, is a good example of challenges that we faced as a team, because while we tried to contact brands and developers, we didn't get the information required at times, but we did manage to get a few numbers so that we could produce a good final product for our client. And as an end product, we produced this visual representation, an avatar or persona, as you will, that embodies the model players playing and technological connectivity. You can see apps on his, here, on his smartphone, Tennis Buddy, which is a social app allowing you to connect to other players. Here you can find Zep, that's connecting to your player, to your performance and analyzing your performance. And finally, here, Tennis Math, that's focusing on analyzing your score and your performance after each game. Additionally, the player is wearing the Garmin smartband and the Babola's connected racket that allows him to share his performances. And now I turn to Alvaro for our conclusions. Thank you.
Well, first, concerning the conclusions, regarding the target conclusions, and taking into account that one of the main criteria was to look into the tennis clubs in the western part of the country, it can be concluded that most and the majority of the tennis clubs are located in the German part of Switzerland. While regarding the criteria of, regarding the tennis clubs that fulfill all the criteria, most of the tennis clubs have clay outdoor courts, and just a few of them have hard indoor courts. So the team clearly recommends Technis to expand its scope to the German part of the country, and also to widen, regarding the surface of the training pad, to widen the scope regarding the surface of the training pad, where it could may function better. Also, regarding the conclusions concerning the product, most tennis clubs fulfill all the criteria are multi-sport clubs, offering their members other sports such as badminton, football, basketball. And since the tennis clubs express that they are still missing some characteristics, and they would also rather to use or to test the smart multi-touch flooring before directly under the surface of their tennis courts, the team clearly recommends Technis to add new features to this training pad and its companion software in order to increase the product value and convince new potential buyers. Now I give the floor to Shervin, who's going to present the conclusions about the tennis persona.
Thank you again, Alvaro. So, as a conclusion, as you saw, we have two aspects of technology. You have either software or hardware. In this world of technology, Technis faces a challenge now. Do they try to compete with them, or do they try to create synergy with them? And that's our recommendation as a team. We would like Technis to try to create synergy with them and try to add to existing functionalities rather than competing with them.
Okay, thank you very much.